This video is to outline how we introduce GenAI into a first year course in social sciences. This particular course is called Social Research Methods in Society, is a core course in the Bachelor of Social Science. It's also core in the Bachelor of Social Work and Bachelor of Criminology, and then we get a smattering of students from things like media as well in it. And we decided from the start that students needed to have GenAI in their study program in the Bachelor of Social Science, but we needed to do it in a really mindful way. So this breaks down our thinking and then how we integrated it. The first big question is, why would you actually do GenAI in a first year course particularly? And for us, very simply, it's because GenAI is actually now a professional capability if you're going to be a social researcher or if you're going to work in government. It's something that is now already being used. The particular study that we're citing here is of 1,600 scientific researchers, including social researchers, from last year that found, a substantial number were already starting to integrate GenAI into their work. And for us, that means that students need to actually understand the basics of this and how to use it ethically from when they join us. It's also something that the industry itself is grappling with. And that is also really important to deal students into so that they can understand some of the contestations around it, some of the hesitations in the industry, but also very, very crucially, what is being understood as ethical use in the industry. It's also a window of time we have. This particular graph shows the different industries using GenAI, the different social research industries using GenAI. Obviously, computer science is way ahead of everyone else, but the uptick is for everybody. So our starting point was to look at the course learning outcomes in terms of what students actually needed to know. And this really gave us three areas to think through. We broke it down into the knowledge students need to have, the skills they're developing, and the capabilities that gets integrated into. In terms of the knowledge, we already talked to students about data sovereignty, and that's the concept of who gets to control the data. It's been particularly applied to Indigenous peoples, and AI then immediately becomes part of that same conversation. We also looked at the research search tools that are being quite widely used, particularly for literature reviews, and the strengths and the limitations of these and what that means in terms of doing a literature review. Allied to that is this idea of source verification and validation. Can you actually trust what you're being fed by various different search engines, including the AI generated ones, and how do you validate that those are true and good results to be using? And finally, this big question of what do ethics look like when we add AI into the mix? So those are where we wanted to weave it through the course. However, we also wanted to think about, if we do this and we introduce students to this, what are they going to miss out on by taking often a more efficient step, which AI is tending to use? If AI can help you generate a literature review, and some of the tools do very well, what do students miss? Well, the first thing they easily miss is learning how to actually critically read a research paper. They get what's produced that looks like a really good summary, but it's based on what the algorithm thinks is a summary, not what may be actually a good critical reading. The second thing they miss is really learning to code through a paper for themes and then use those codes across a number of papers to see themes emerging from the research. Again, this can be generated, but it doesn't mean that what's generated through the code is actually helping you answer your research question. The final thing that they can easily miss, and this is actually quite a difficult skill to learn, is how to synthesize research, bring together all those research studies. So if we know that this is what students can miss when they're going to take potentially a shortcut. We need to find other ways to build it into the course itself in order to give them this kind of practice. So we actually thought programmatically. So we looked first of all across all 4 research courses that we have available and said, what do students learn when? And one of the first things we did, and we were already thinking about this anyway, was to say, let's slow it down. Let's give them space in first year to really consolidate some good research skills, particularly first as consumers of research, just learning to read research papers and critically analyze them, and to delay maybe some of the harder analytic skills from primary research till second year. So in first year, we've slowed it down. They spend more time just critically reading research in class. We've actually increased the length of tutorials so we can do this. So they've gone from 1 to 1.5 hours. And we've delayed having them actually implement a research project for themselves till second year. They'll still plan it in first year and they'll get to play with different research methods, but they won't do that harder analysis till second year. The last thing we're doing is really trying to give a consistent approach across all 4 courses into how the industry uses AI and therefore how we'll ask students to express their use of AI. And the key real principle here is very open use of it and disclosing that, declaring it, and marking the rubrics accordingly. We're going to look at one assessment particularly. It's woven through all 3, but particularly the literature review. And here you can see this year we're actually asking students to also research AI. That won't happen every year, but it happens to be happening this year. But the assessment instructions in the assessment brief very clearly tell the students they must do a literature search using one conventional literature search tool, one AI literature search tool. They are then to explain how they understand the differences in these results, to compare them, to describe very clearly the basis they use for selection about which paper goes in and which paper goes out. And they also have to keep a search log where they talk about the keywords they used, the database they searched, the number of results, and include that as an appendix to this. And that way they're also disclosing directly which databases they're drawing from. This is also reflected in the assessment rubric, and if they want the high distinction, they have to engage in that comparative discussion about AI versus non-AI. And in fact, they will fail, as you can see on the other end, if they fail to sort of discuss this in any way. So this is the paper we drew on in terms of nature, just giving us originally those professional capabilities. But I hope this kind of sets down a template for sort of broader thinking about how AI can be integrated into courses in a meaningful way that's not just about avoiding academic integrity issues, but actually building the professional capacity of students for when they graduate.